We're going to be back at 2 o'clock with Lynne Franks, who is bringing feminine wisdom into community transformation with circles, compassion and change, which sounds amazing. But until then, we are going to take a little break and we'll be back about 5 to 2 with an update of what's happening across the rest of the festival and with more information about what you can find on Saturday and Sunday as well. See you in a bit.
Because so many, well, in fact, all your speakers are friends of mine, even been relatives of mine at different points. And I'm really very happy to have invited and got 2 friends of mine who I have a lot of time and respect for to join me today. Jo Berry is one of them, and you can see her here. And Jo has been involved with conflict resolution and been doing work all over the world, really, for the last 18, 20 years, Jo. I'll ask you more about your particular situation when we talk. And I've asked you very much here to talk about the kind of resistance to change that we will inevitably see as we move into the new dream, the new future, the new world. And Sue Shelbourn-Barrows is my mayor in Wincanton, the little town where we both live. We both came here about the same time. Sue's been the mayor of Wincanton for the last year and has already brought in some wonderful changes and ideas and vision for what this small town of 6,000 in Somerset can do together as a community, which is so in alignment with my beliefs. So it is such a pleasure to be quite synchronistically and coincidentally living in the same town. So I've asked Sue to share some of her ideas of her vision for bringing sustainability into Wincanton. So I'm going to talk a little bit myself first, if I may, about the big picture, and then I'm going to be asking questions to Jo and Sue, and then we're going to open it up to the chat for questions from all of you. I hope that some of our Seed Tribe are here today, and also people who are not Seed Tribe. I hope there's women, men, and whoever else has come in from outer space will be here today, will be very welcome. So as you heard from Georgina, I came from a fairly commercial background. I had a big PR company at one point, doing all the sorts of things which I don't approve of now, of course. And that then sort of segued in through the work I was doing with organisations like Greenpeace, Amnesty, launching consumer awareness campaigns, going on my own spiritual journey, really. I started understanding that there was more to life than worrying about the latest frock length. So I sold my business and I wrote Seed Handbook, which Georgina referred to, and that was really the first book for women, talking about a sustainable, collaborative way of doing business together, where we would not only be creating a business, an enterprise based on our passions and sometimes our hobbies, but things that we really believed in, but we would also be creating something that would give back in some way to the world. And when I look at the Seed Handbook, which I do have a copy of here, which I'm in the process of rewriting at the moment, I must say, and bringing it up to date, it still is so relevant to today. And I think that whatever we're going to be creating together as a society for this new future and this opportunity we've got to create this new dream together now is very much still based on a lot of the kind of ideas and intuitive ideas that I had then, because I don't think I'm necessarily that smart, but somehow I've always been extremely intuitive, and I knew there was going to come a time when women particularly would want to work from home, that they would be using what was 20 years ago, the new technology, to connect with each other, to work in their communities and to collaborate. And that is indeed what is happening now, which for me is just part of some of the positive things that are happening right now in this crazy world of ours. So what I've been doing in the last 3-4 months, apart from working very hard and getting to know my community better and build it up, the Seed community of like-minded women who, like me, believe that we can create a new future based on values and based on collaboration and community, is to be going on a kind of world tour of webinars, conferences, conversations, much like this great weekend that Pete Lawrence has put on, Campfire, and listening as well as speaking and learning. I've been just blown away by some of the fantastic conversations I've heard over the last few months. Humanity Rising, I try and listen to most nights, which comes out of Holland, but is totally global, put on by Jim Garrison. The Time of the Sixth Sun, Nikki Williams, who made this great documentary, has she has guests twice a week. There's so much out there. There's Pachamama Alliance. There's too much out there, actually, because it's overwhelming. But I have picked up even more. But what has really got to me, got to my heart, and makes me have shivers up my back, is the amount of synchronicity that's out there. Words and phrases that I've been developing and working with for years, I'm hearing from others, and it's not because they're plugged into what I'm doing, far from it. We are all plugged in to the same dream. So when I hear Charles Eisenstein talking about sacred geometry, or I hear Indra Adnam talking about her alternative politics and the elephant system, the new systems, the circular systems, and when the Jonathan Layton and the panel you had just on, I mean, that's so very interesting. I've known Jonathan for years. What he's been talking about for years is so relevant now. So it's as if we've all been out there in our own way, working on our theories, our projects, our books, our talks, and there is a tribe of us, of change makers, of thought leaders, millions of us, thank goodness, or thousands anyway, who somehow know, it's not 6 degrees of separation, it's like 1 or 2 at the most, all know each other and have really come together with this same dream, with this idea that sacred geometry, a new circular economy, that women leadership, which I've heard from so many of the men that I respect as well, the power that small towns can have with volunteerism, Michael Tellinger's work, which I've been a big fan of for a long time, and which I've shared with Sue, and some of which we feel is just so relevant to what Sue's vision and Wincanton is. I mean, there are just fantastic people out there. Bill and Lynne Twist from the Pachamama Alliance and the work they've been doing in Ecuador, where I visited with them, and spent time with some of the tribes with them many years ago. And so much wisdom, I have to say, ultimately, more than from anywhere, is from the indigenous men and women, and particularly the indigenous women I have had the privilege to hear speak. And I think the one group and one conversation that resonated with me most of all is the group of First Nation women, activists and spiritual leaders of all ages from all over North America who came together in, I think it was the second Humanity Rising event, where they said that several of them had had a dream, this was before the lockdown, that several had had a dream to go home, be with their families, be in front of their altar and pray. And they were all very active. They were in all the Dakota and all the various protests that were going on to keep the rivers pure and to stop the oil companies destroying their lands. And so they didn't take any notice. And then the lockdown came in, and then they had to go home, and now they are in front of their altars. And the emphasis that they made, and that I really felt, that we have to start with self and we have to start with prayer. So whatever our religion, whatever our spiritual beliefs, it has to start at home in front of our altars with our prayers. And I totally get that. And this last 3 months or so has been, for me, a gift. Now, that doesn't mean to say I'm not more than aware and sympathetic of the terrible things that have gone on out there for so many people. And I have nothing but sympathy. Well, my whole heart bleeds for anybody that's gone through any kind of pain or loss in this period of time. And particularly the BAME community and the frontliners who just deserve every bit of support we can give them. But on a personal level, this opportunity to take a step back and to be out of the general madness of my daily life of rushing here and rushing there, being on this screen an awful lot, I must say, but having the time to really think about the different aspects of how we can collaboratively get together. And I talked in the topic today, I've talked about bringing women's intuition into community transformation through circles. I developed about 3 years ago, and I've been developing circles, which I call the pods of seven, based on 7 archetypes, actually ancient indigenous archetypes in many cases, where women take a role in these groups of 7 to do community initiatives, community businesses, social enterprises, working together, supporting each other. And actually we've done a little bit of work in Frome, where an awful lot of the people here are based, and in Somerset and elsewhere. And with the work I've been doing with Seed generally over the years, and African villages and post-war zones, excuse me, and refugee women, it seems that wherever I go, whatever the culture, whatever the backgrounds, whatever the religions of the women I've worked with, even when I don't speak the same language, something comes from the heart, a love appears. Well, a love is demonstrated from woman to woman, where we can open up and really be a community working together. So my throat's gone, which is a shame, because I just wanted to read you something, and if I may. And I just also want to give one little 4 or 5 words that Charles Eisenstein said the other day, when he was talking to Jim Garrison. He said, utopia is well overdue. And I thought, absolutely spot on. And it's by hope that we can create this beautiful future. It's by our dreams. And again, the Indigenous women that I had the privilege of listening to, and on various occasions, all talk about the dream. And it's not just the Indigenous women, and it's men as well. We all know that we have to manifest the dream. And I realized quite early on the importance of not getting attached and going down the rabbit hole of all the conspiracy theory stuff that was coming my way. At the same time, not going down the rabbit hole of watching the news and listening to all the nonsense and lies that we're getting told, and constant, I can't even describe it, it just makes me so mad every day. The stuff that comes out contradicting whatever was said by those who are supposed to govern us from the day before, it's just ridiculous. We cannot expect in any way that we are going to get the leadership in this country for sure, and I think in several of the others, not the women-led countries of course, but some of the others, where we can't possibly expect to get the leadership we want. We want to know about how we can create a new future. How can we use this time to go forward in a way that is going to create sufficiency, sustainability, roof over our heads, food for the children. We have enough sufficiency in this world for every man, woman, child and being. We need to concentrate on not damaging the climate anymore. I just saw on social media today, which I do read, that some minister or other had just slipped in. They weren't going to do any more fracking in this country anymore, that it had gone away. I don't know if anybody else saw that, just as a side issue. Oh yeah, we're not doing fracking anymore. I mean, we don't need the oil. They've just caught onto the fact of the batteries and all the work that Tesla did over 100 years ago. They're suddenly waking up to, I hope. So it's our time. And I do think that women really need to take a leadership role in this, in creating the dream of how we want agriculture, education, science, technology, medicine, how we live in community, how we can grow our own vegetables, and how we can really create a future for all of us. And in my case, at my time of life, for my 7 grandchildren, that can grow up in a world that is the right, and everybody's grandchildren and everybody's children can grow up in a world which they deserve to grow up in. We can make this a beautiful planet, but we have to dream it, and then we can make it. And I believe that with our energy and with our collaboration and with our co-creativity, we can create this new future. We really must. I don't want to read that in 6 months' time we won't be able to shift climate change. I don't want to read we've got a year left to save this. I believe we can create the change that we want to see in the world. And of course we have to start, as we know, we have to create the change in ourselves, and then we have to be the change and then create it outside. So I hope you don't mind if I'm going to read a little bit here, and then I'm going to introduce Joe and Sue, and not do all the talking. I wrote something in 2014. No, what am I talking about? I wrote it in 2004, and it was shaping the future from a book I wrote called Grow. And I'm just going to read a little bit of it, because this is where my belief system comes from, and I'd really love to talk to any of you further on this subject as we go into the chat. As women, we are traditionally the caretakers of our culture. Our responsibility is to understand and somehow make sure that the changes that are happening in our world preserve the basic humanity in us all. By connecting with the principles of the sacred feminine, such as those as found in ancient matriarchal civilizations, a more nurturing society can evolve, one that abhors violence, advocates such values as justice, compassion and love, and raises its children to reach their full potential as human beings. When people talk with such idealism, they are often accused of being naive. How can we change a world that's solidly entrenched in the way of competition, domination, and violence? My answer is that without creating the vision, nothing can be achieved. And without having the change in our hearts, we will find ourselves living in a world that perpetuates everything that goes against our feminine sensibilities. If we're talking about getting rid of the old, outdated, patriarchal ways of running the world, it's essential to present a pragmatic vision of what we want to replace it with. We need an overall blueprint of what a new world based on principles of the sacred feminine would look like and how it would work. The primary foundation for such a world is cooperation. First and foremost is cooperation between male and female. As women, we know the best, most efficient way to get things done is to work together, and that means living and working with men in harmonious coexistence, valuing the perspectives and strengths of both sexes and creating a higher quality of life for all. It must also be a world of cooperation between business and community, human beings and the planet, national governments and non-governmental organizations, young and old, spirituality and science, and our inner and outer selves. The opportunity to create this world does exist now. It's possible to create a world where we can bring people together and heal our families, our communities, and our world. To do so would take a new breed of leaders, ones who aren't tied to the old ways of doing things. Rather than money or power, these leaders must have spiritual values to guide them. And since spiritual values are at our core, it is vitally important for women to step up and take the lead in this transformation of society. A cooperative society is an organic, evolutionary step away from the world we presently live in. When the power of when national governments diminishes, that power will naturally transfer into specific small and large networks which transcend national boundaries and link with one another. Consequently, a new economic order could be created that truly rewards efforts, including the caring of others. Distribution of land and natural resources would be fairly shared amongst the people who live on them, and the need to conquer and repress others in the name of power would not be a consideration. Cooperative ways of working together, whether in agriculture or small enterprise networks which encourage individual creativity instead of exploiting workers, would develop gradually as this new feminine paradigm took hold. And in a cooperative society, based on a feminine perspective, training in technology skills would be open for all, and education in understanding and respecting the differences between cultures and beliefs of others would become an intrinsic element of society. Traditional and holistic medicine would integrate, creating a new science which creates and cures disease based in part on sensible nutrition, exercise, and meditation. Our senior citizens would be revered and respected, keeping our history, both personal and societal, alive. Men and women would create new kinds of relationships, sexual and platonic, based on mutual respect and love, rather than selfish needs and society's expectations. We would have freedom of choice in how we wish to live in every aspect of our lives. Yes, it is a somewhat utopian vision, but we must believe it's also possible to achieve it. Our personal responsibility in making all this come about is to first bring ourselves into the same kind of harmonious balance we wish to see the world in. By finding a state of peace within us where we can stay calm and balanced, we can project a sense of love and creativity to those we engage with. Through our feminine principles, we can achieve a natural state of being that is connected with others. It is then up to us to live within our own cooperative world. Only when we achieve this personally can we begin to create a new feminine future. So this feminine future that as I said, I wrote 14 years ago and is absolutely relevant now more than ever, is a gender-free zone. It's just a different way of doing things. It's a new paradigm. It's certainly a space where women have to take leadership roles, particularly in societies where traditionally they are very much not in leadership roles, but in every role. But at the same time, this new paradigm has got to be equality for men and for women, and for respect for all. That's the thing, cooperative. Jo, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to ask Sue a little bit more about, well, not a little bit more, I'm going to ask her about her vision for our small town. So, Jo, do you want to tell a little bit about your background and how you got involved with this whole area of conciliation, and how you see we can create without what can I say, without stress and without confliction, this change in society? I think you've got to unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you. Yes, well, a great question, and so inspiring, Lynne, to hear your vision. It's so relevant today. So for the last 40 years, maybe 35 years, I've been being a change I'd like to be in the world, and that has been to not blame, having had the pain of losing my father in a terrorist attack. And that's led me to 20 years of meeting and dialoguing with the man who killed my father, and then taking what I've been learning into other areas. And right now what I'm focusing on is supporting young people who come from the communities I know best, the Tower Hamlets in London. So they're some of the most socially deprived, and it's been very challenging for the young people. I feel there's a massive need to listen, and what I've been learning about is the power of listening. When I met Patrick McGee, he said he was disarmed by the fact I gave him empathy. And if I'd gone in there shouting, "You're right," I mean, "You're wrong and I'm right," he would have stayed in a very safe place of justification. So this has sort of shown me the power of listening. And I'm also creating restorative circles, which is about listening to people, creating a safe place to listen to each other, and to find ways, even if there's difference, to be able to understand and listen and to respect. Now, the biggest challenge of all of this way, of what I call the restorative way, being compassionate, is that I still, and I think most of us still, have a need sometimes to blame. I call that the old way, to make someone less than us, to make someone wrong so we can feel better, especially when we're hurting, when we're scared. So how can we change that response? So the change definitely starts with ourselves, and Patrick McGee has been a fantastic teacher for me. But how can we suspend our need to blame and judgment so that we can listen to the other? Because I believe when we listen to our other and connect, then we are going to understand their story and feel, if I'd lived their life, would I have made the same choices? And in that moment, there is no other. And this new world has to be based on there being no other, no one demonized, where we hear everyone's stories, even those stories that are hard to hear.
I'm just thinking, as you were speaking so eloquently about that, about Black Lives Matters, because obviously that's been so much part of the last few weeks since George Floyd was killed, and how the most moving image for me, and I think for a lot of people, from the entire global response has been that incredible man whose name I don't remember, is also a Patrick, who went and scooped up that right-wing guy, the white guy that had been badly hurt, and picked him up, put him on his shoulders and took him to safety. And when I saw he and his various friends who'd gone in to look after the young people of both sides and make sure that there wasn't any violence, that's when you think, yes, when there's men like this out there in the world, we have a future. And certainly didn't see it from the, sad to say, from the right-wing side. I mean, it was just dreadful. But this whole thing, it had to come. It's like as if this particular period of time, all these things that have been festering and bubbling up under society, whether it's Me Too, whether it's Black Lives Matter, all the things that have been just so horrifically wrong with our society have come up to the surface at a point when we can look at them and say, no more. We have to create a new way forward, and that has to be part of it too. I'm sure you agree with that. It's just been very interesting as a learning curve.
I think it's like the shadow. All the shadows are now coming out, and just when we think we've seen it all, there could be another one and then another one. And the root of all of it to me is the same. The root is about our ability to connect and to love, and is kind of like a spiritual lack that's been there that we're now refinding. And the leadership that those group of men showed to me is what real leadership, and were that very few politicians. It was an amazing talk earlier on about compassion and politicians, and there are a few, but we don't normally see that. But they are, they're not seeing their other. They are vulnerable. They are wise. I mean, there's so many things that they were portraying, expressing, and I suppose the person I admire most would be Jacinda Ardern. Her way of leadership is based on empathy. It's based on compassion. What did she do after the terrible massacre in Christchurch? She was there in the Muslim community as their sister, and you can't pretend that. she was feeling it. And that's the kind of leadership that, we're not seeing here. And I yearn for it and just wish, that we one day will have that.
I completely agree. It really is a leadership which encourages us to live from a place of love, not fear. So Sue, you're a leader in our community. You've got a bit dark by, I don't know whether,
I don't know why.
I don't know, your light's been going on now. There you go. So, you've come to live in a new town, and with a lot of courage, you've taken the role on of mayor, and you've come in with a vision. Do you want to talk a little bit about your vision for Wincanton?
Yes, thank you, Lynn. So I'm coming at, first I'm going to set the scene in terms of who I am. So I've worked over 20 years in the public sector. I've worked in the NHS, social care, community, charities, and I've done various different things that have opened my knowledge and experience to people and the different lives that we all lead. And that has helped me in terms of my perspective on where there's opportunity, but also as I've come into our local town. I've been here 3 years. I've chosen to step forward and work with the community. And as part of that learning from my public sector and my interest in doing enabling communities to develop, it's allowed me the opportunity to shape that, working with our community, with our local businesses and charities. So our vision, if I was to talk about a vision, and it is our vision, it's our town vision, is about sustainability, but it's sustainability in terms of looking to meet the needs of our community and what that looks like. So we have, the young, the old, and our businesses, and actually looking in and saying, what does sustainability mean to each of those? And with that, we've shaped a plan, and that plan is, we have our first year plan agreed, and we're working around, we have a pot of money secured to actually develop that vision. So it's about looking to nature, rewilding, looking to do some of the sustainability aspects around repair and share, so many different things, but it all comes from the voice of our community.
And in fact, several ideas that we've seen in Frome, like the library, the share library, and the communal fridge. I don't know if there's a repair cafe there, but we see ourselves as a little sister down the road, I think, for Frome.
So to some degree, there's learning out there. I mean, for me, it's about capturing what we can find in terms of what other towns or other communities have done, and then looking to see how does that work within our community, and then testing that with our residents, because ultimately it has to fit within what we see as sustainability. And we're really keen, and we're listening to community gardens, putting in trees where there's fruit, where community larders, so many different things, but it's all coming from the ability for us to listen and understand, and then work together to shape what that looks like. And it's actually genuinely exciting to do so. Clearly, majority are supportive of that approach, but there's always some aspect that change is a difficult process. And my whole career has been related to change and enabling change. So for me, it's about how we listen to those people that don't quite see how it fits, and actually look to understand how we can make everyone move forward at the same time, or within the same space, so to speak. So for me, it's about working with communities, working with the schools, and other elements within our very tight-knit and positive community that enable that to happen. And if I might say, one of the biggest things that I would like to celebrate for our community is what we did from the 23rd of March, when we agreed our plan for responding to the national emergency, which is COVID. And we came together as a town, and we came together with our 3 offers, but also recognising the importance and valuing volunteers, social action. And I'm really proud of what we did. Our businesses stepped in and stepped up and worked with us as a town to do what was right to support our town. And that's meant that they've tested new business models, which that is a great thing to do, and strengthen their, you know, their business model to try things out and, you know, decide what will work for the future. So as a town, I think we've got so many good things, but ultimately it came down to listening, which is key to any part of change, engaging, and actually then shaping that into what the future, what the town would like to see as the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting, the aspect of creating a new kind of business. I mean, I've been there myself. I've now gone far more online. My little shop just opened this week, and that's now gone online. We've created a craft business because we know that a lot of people are now much more into staying at home and making beautiful objects. Yes. And we've learned a huge amount. And one thing I will say about this town as well is that I have never seen it so friendly. I mean, it's as if our masks not were put on, but were taken off.
Yeah.
And everybody says hello. Everybody asks each other how they are. There's a huge amount of volunteerism. I don't think anybody's really been left on their own. I mean, we're a small town. That's our advantage, if you like, compared to a bigger town like Frome, is that we are just under 6,000 people. And most people, everybody knows somebody, and there's a huge support system, and it's been fantastic to watch. And I think it's very exciting. But Jo, let's go back to this thing about change, the resistance to change, because inevitably, and even in our town, and I know, Sue, you've been doing some fantastic town hall projects, I mean, not in the town hall, outside the town hall, where you've really been listening, as you say, inevitably, not talking about Wincanton specifically, but in any community, and I know Frome have had their issues too, when change happens, some people feel very uncomfortable. It's inevitable. So is there a way, Jo, that you would see that change could be brought in and facilitated, maybe by women and men, in a more harmonious fashion than sometimes it can be?
Definitely. You know, the old way would be, and I've been part of it, where you have two people on the radio and the two opposite views, and they're meant to sort of argue and prove they're right and they're wrong. And I remember when I had someone who said to me that what I represented was wrong, and he was totally against it, and that he was a British soldier, had been a British soldier. So I said to him, I imagine, he'd been a British soldier serving in Northern Ireland, and I said to him, you know, I imagine when you were 18, 19, being a soldier in the 70s, that must have been really scary. You know, what was it like for you? Please tell me. And he started sharing his story, which was, as anyone's story is, was profound and full of all sorts of like suffering and fear. And I said, that sounds so scary. He'd forgotten that he was there to argue with me. We then had a conversation. Now that meant I had to not have a position of I am right. Now, how do we do that? I think a lot of preparation. I think I've seen in restorative circles, in mediation, we have so many different circles that we have around the world of people doing this work. You have to have the preparation so people are ready to hear each other. Then you have to have some safety, some guidelines. But I truly believe that once we can hear each other's story and connect, then we're going to be more curious. So you think that, so that means this change in your life means you have less of this rather than more. So how can we then support you in having more of whatever it is? And then you can find the need of what's going on. So it requires a massive shift in thinking, and then a safe conversation to understand the impact. We all are impacted all the time. What's beneath that impact? What is the need that's not being met? And if we can meet on those unmet needs, then we can create solutions for everyone.
And very much coming from a place of compassion, rather than having to win in the conversation. I don't know if either of you are aware, maybe we've discussed it before, about what happened in Iceland after they had their big economic meltdown. And of course, Iceland is only about 330,000 people. Most of them live in Reykjavik. And I was lucky enough to go over there for a couple of conferences and heard their story about how they did a town hall meeting where they had, I think, not all the population of Iceland, but people representing every age group, every type, every background. And they sat and more than once and just sat and did the sort of appreciative inquiry, changed tables, cafe style, really listening to each other. And I mean, they're very nice people, the Icelandic, considering they live in the dark most of the time. They're very, when I've been there, I found them nothing but hospitable and lovely. But it was just interesting that everybody, including young people, were really listened to, and that's how they made their shift. And before I open it up to any questions from anybody in the call other than ourselves, I also wanted to bring up this area of economy again, and the new economy, and I've referred to it once or twice, what I call the circular economy. And I'm not the only one. That's another thing. I was going around saying, oh, this new circular economy, and then suddenly I found out that somebody had written a book about it over 100 years ago, that lots of people are using the phrase. Again, I repeat Charles Eisenstein, who I am a big hero of. He's a big hero to me, I'm not a big hero to him. But there are lots of people out there talking about this new circular economy, and I've been listening and I've been thinking, oh, but I thought that, and I thought that. And what I realized is, it's like all this information is out there in the ether. And if we open up, and if we wake up, and if we are listening, not only to ourselves and each other, but to perhaps our inner wisdom, perhaps something outside that's sending the information in, who knows. There is information coming in about new ways of doing things. And sacred economy and circular economy, both actually, is part of it. And the circular economy that I see is based on much more of a share economy, gift economy, barter. I wrote about that 20 years ago in Seed, and I can see it happening more and more, that we are going to do business a different way. And I think that again comes very naturally to women. I've been, when I've worked in post-war zones and African villages and such like, I've seen it's been very much women bartering vegetable seeds to some eggs to whatever it may be, even in the most disastrous areas. And I've worked a little bit, and I'm going to do a lot more with the Syrian refugees, and the women, they share and they give. And when the children's clothes get outgrown, they just pass them on to the next. When the African women grow their vegetables and sell them in the market, whatever profit they've got goes to seeds for the younger women coming up. It's a natural way of doing things. And I would like, that's how I see and how I believe we can do things. We live in a world where we have to pay our rent, we have mortgages, to buy our food. We still live in a currency world that's based on traditional currency. But I can also see a new way of coming in where we will do far more exchange resources. That's what I'm advocating with Seed, and what I'm looking at both from an international development side of work, which I'm doing at the moment, as well as what we can do in our own local communities. What do you think? I'll start with you, Sue, and just say this new way of doing things, that we can perhaps exchange skills, exchange resources, as well as, of course, we've got to make some money and perhaps have some community money. We had a little while ago, sorry to carry on before I shut up, but then we had the Bristol pound, the Brighton pound, the Lewis pound. We had a lot of local currency. We had let systems a few years ago, and a lot of them did okay for a few years and fizzled out. That's because I think they were before their time, and there wasn't the governance to make sure they worked. But what do you think about a different way of doing things, of this circular economy where we're supporting each other far more?
I think there are many opportunities to be explored, that being one. I think firstly, as a town, we need to gain the foundation about establishing what we mean by that, and the sustainability bit around our commitment to be sustainable, whether that's ecological, business, environmental, people, whatever that might be, and actually then look to see how that might work. So there's interest in it. I know there's interest because I've had those conversations, but we need to then build some framework around it, and also a little bit of trust about what that looks like. And obviously there will always be policies that need to be met and guidance that needs to be adhered to. But I think from our perspective, I think it's a great opportunity to think and work differently. And I think that's the beginning of the story for us. We are literally stepping forward into this world in our new model, our new paradigm. And I'd like to see what the opportunities are and test that with people, but they need to believe and understand where the opportunities are themselves so we can gain the momentum. So yes, 100%. I think it's a great opportunity. We just need to, when we're able to, come together in a way that enables us to have those type of conversations.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very interested to see a question from Karen in the chat, which says, without becoming mayor, how would someone start some of these initiatives in their own town? And as you know, Suba, because before you became mayor, I'd started some of these initiatives with some of the other women that were mostly had small businesses, as I did, in this town. And we started saying, what can we do together to bring more sustainability and working and connection with each other. So we started running a craft market once a month on a Saturday, which comes back again this Saturday, I'm glad to say, in a smaller version. And we started just talking about what we were going to be doing in our own businesses and how we could create more, and bringing together Sue Pace, who runs the Balsam Centre, which is our community charity, bringing together yourself, bringing together from South Somerset District Council. This wasn't an official body. This was a group of, I have to say, women who I invited into the Seed Cafe, and we started talking, what can we all do together? So you've been on your trajectory, and it's exactly synchronistic. We're all coming from the same place. So you're doing it in the way as mayor that you can bring in, and the community can buy into these ideas of rewilding, and very much have, because I was part of those circles and heard myself people all ages and all backgrounds saying, yes, we want to rewild, we want to plant more trees, we want to bring back butterfly meadows, or all the things that they came up with, which was so beautiful. And at the same time, we were with these groups of 7. So Karen, in answer to your question, and I'll talk a bit about it at the end, I believe that a group of 7 women, any backgrounds, ages, whatever, come together with these different roles of the power of 7. We can create initiatives in our communities, not only in towns, in villages, in cities, wherever we are, as a community initiative from the grassroots. I think one thing I haven't said, which is very important for me, is that it is going to be from the grassroots, whatever goes forward and up, as opposed to what we're used to in the old paradigm and hierarchical ways of working, which is from the up down. So I know, Sue, even though as mayor, you see yourself as part of this circle of us change makers in the community who are working together. I think it's really important. It is a new way of doing things, or maybe it's not a new way, it's a very ancient way of doing things. If you think about it, women and men sitting around the camp, around the fire, like Mac McCartney, another great wise guy, talks about, we sit around the fire as Indigenous people do, and we discuss what is the best decision to make for the children, what is the best decision to make for the future, and how can we do that in a circular system, which is not even a system, but a circular way. And we're not expecting somebody up there who we've given all this ridiculous power to, having some kind of wisdom that we don't have. And I think one of the things that's been so obvious, and I've said it before, I'm saying it again, it gets a bit cross, is how little wisdom is up there, who at the top of the, supposedly at top of the pile, who are supposed to be telling us what to do, and we listen and we say, what are they talking about? This isn't even sense, not even common sense. And so it's been an incredible example of seeing, yes, we can make change. And there's a great quote I love from Buckminster Fuller, which I can never remember the actual words, but it's, if you want to create something new, you just make it so attractive, that's not the words, but I can't remember the words, that everybody just naturally gravitates from the old system to the new. So it's not like we've got to go to war and have a revolution and say, that's it, Boris and the rest of you, we're going to start something better. We just quietly get on and do it. And as it grows organically from the bottom, circularly, it will just happen and be. And then someday we'll turn around and say, oh my goodness, things have changed. So, but we don't have that long, that's the big thing. Joe, do you have anything you want to add to that before we open it up to anybody's got any questions?
I'm ready for questions. It'd be great.
Okay, so I don't know if anybody would like to add anything to us, to what we're saying, Georgina. Add whether there's anything.
While we wait to see if there are any others, if that's okay. Yeah. It's fascinating listening to you all, and really inspiring, and I love the idea of this group of 7, and there's obviously strength in numbers, but actually we need groups of really getting on with things. How do we make sure that we have a really good cross-section of ages? Because I think we live in a society where, as women, we're still all quite separated out into our different generations, and it's quite hard sometimes to get that range together in one place.
Well, I guess it's whoever sets up the circle. Shall I explain what the seven archetypes are? Because some of them resonate as a sort of older, for perhaps for an older woman, some for younger, or maybe not. The 7 archetypes always start with seed sower, which is the creative, and they're in us. They're all in us, aligned with our own inner different archetypes, as well as in a group of 7. So the seed sower, the ideas, the creative side. The alchemist, which is the producer, the action, the strategist. The storyteller, which if you look at in the modern world is somebody on social media, but it could equally be somebody sitting around the circle telling the story. But I always talk about the need to start with our own story, to rewrite our own story in many cases. And it's what we're doing right now, is we're creating a new narrative for the future. So it's about the new narrative. Medicine woman, which is about the well-being of yourself, of course, but the well-being of your community, the well-being of your project, the well-being of the world. Skydancer, which is the archetype which is about relationships, partnerships, sort of the tantric relationship builder, I call it. It's the one that dances in a very gracious way, the different connections. Space Weaver, which is the inner artist that brings color and light and design into our environment in every way. And Wisdom Keeper, which ensures that the values of the group really stay within the project or within the initiative. So I'm currently trying to move myself from seed sower, which I've always been, even at my old age, to wisdom keeper, because it's about time. I'm trying to become the wise woman that I've always wanted to be and stop it. And then my business, which has got lots of people I work with, as well as the people that work in there, we've just got an 18, it's not even 18 yet, a young 18-year-old starting to work in it. So we've a 23-year-old, 50-year-old, me at 72, and various other people of different ages that work with us. And we all listen to each other. It always goes back to listening, doesn't it, really? I think it is important to have a cross-section. I really do. And, you know, I have a number of grandchildren, and my oldest is 16, who's actually Jamie Catto's daughter, and who was on earlier today. And I talked to her a lot about, you know, it's her future, it's not my future. I'm just here to hold the space for her. She's a very wise young woman. And it's like, we really do need to hear each other. It's so important.
Definitely, and having that safe space where people can feel like they can share and dream and innovate and all of that stuff and be sort of, you know, in a way that we can do it together.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I remember at school I was always getting told off because I'd be looking out the window all the time, and the teacher would be constantly saying, "You're daydreaming again, come back in the room, come back in the room." I wasn't academic. I left school at 16 with just about 4 O-levels, and went to kind of University of Life and started my own business at 21 and really learned. And I love writing, it's my thing, but I mean, I literally learned on the job. I just remember that. Why would you tell a child to stop daydreaming? You want to tell a child to daydream, don't you? Don't you think, Joe? About dreaming, encouraging our children to dream.
Well, yeah, I mean, we need to change our whole educational system, which is flawed in so many ways. But getting back to the all ages, I think it's important to listen. You know, some of the, I've been fortunate to work in many different countries around the world, and last night I got a message from some of I call them my girls, who are, they're 17-year-olds, Muslim in Tower Hamlets, and they started chatting to me. And I think it's the most meaningful work I've done, and all I did was listen to them. And they said they'd never been listened to by someone outside their community. They'd never been listened to by anyone older. They'd never been respected. They've never had someone say their opinion mattered. And that was so simple. So I think the question is, how can we, those of us that are older, you know, how can we just say to young people, you really matter. Please share to me your life. What is it like every day? What's it like living in that community? You know, it's such a simple thing to do, and it's so powerful. And this amazing young group, they started then creating these positive projects and developing skills. And I've been hearing that they're carrying on challenging injustice and racism in their community all through lockdown. You know, there's no stopping them. They just needed to be listened to, and we can all do that for each other.
If I may, I think from my work in our community and actually across all of my career, the thing that's made the biggest difference is the ability to listen, but it's giving the environment they feel safe to be listened in. And sometimes it's about being real and going to them and setting the scene in terms of opening the conversation, but truly listening. If you get them to open up and you start building that conversation and those relationships, you get the most value out of it. And that's the value for us who are looking to do something different, but actually for them, to give them, to feel like they can make a difference and they are important. And for me, that's ultimately the goal that we have. Everything we've done around engagement has been multi-age, multi-gender, across businesses and residents. We've engaged with the schools from primary school, and we plan to do, lockdown unfortunately stopped us in our tracks around school, some of the school work. But for us, that's what we should be doing. We should be listening to all age groups, all times, but we provide the safe space for them to feel they can contribute in a meaningful way. And you give them that two-way conversation. So they talk to you, you feed back, and it's a circular approach. So they then feel like they've been listened to, but actually understand what you've done with that information and how you can enable them to connect to others, to provide, give them the support or the right links to be able to start having those conversations with other people. So it's building the momentum of change.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really important questions coming from Helena Doyle for Joe, which I'm glad we've got time to deal with, because it's something that I was thinking about myself. We've seen counter BLM, Black Lives Matter protests from large groups of angry white men trying to protect their history. They've been publicly branded as thugs by nearly every side as they've undermined their own cause. They seem to carry a lot of pain and anger. Joe, this is for you. How would you go about holding empathy circles or civil conversations with people who have that kind of anger?
Well, there are people who, I don't know where you're from, but in Bristol, I know there are people looking at what can be done to create restorative circles. Certainly at the time when they are in their full anger, and the ones, my daughter saw some raging through Hyde Park last week coming at her. Luckily, there were police and riot shields that stopped them. That's not a time to have the conversation. Later on, they have people in their community who I would find, who I would reach, and give them time to share their stories before you bring them with anyone. A lot of preparation, a lot of time, maybe just pick a few. We also have in this country ex-members of some of the far-right white groups who are doing amazing work. We need to engage them because they understand the mindset, because that was them when they were younger. Bring them, create circles, but only with them. Find out what it is that they really need and to be heard. Then when they're ready, then maybe we move it in then to the people who they see as their other, whether it's blacks or Asians. But it will take a long, long time. But this is crucial work. We do this. We have to do this. If we label or demonize any group as we can't listen to them, then we're causing more problems. So somehow we have to engage them. You know, the answer may come from men, from older men who've been there. You know, it may come from creative things. It might come from sport. You know, but we need to find those ways for them to be heard. Economically, some of them are probably having a very hard time.
And alcohol presumably is not exactly helping the situation. So there's a lot of healing to be done, and we keep hearing about, once we come out of lockdown, the trauma that's going to be, and the mental health issues that's going to be evident. Obviously, there's also, as we know, been a lot of domestic violence. I mean, we can't cover the whole gamut of social issues in the next few minutes before we finish. But there's clearly going to be a lot of work to be done, a lot of healing that has to be done. And it's needed now, of course, but it's on every level in our country, as much as every country's got its own different requirements and pain and healing that needs to be done. And in our country, it seems that a lot of this is going to be trauma and mental health issues. And as we start, whatever happens with the lockdown, what would you say on that one? And I guess what we've talked about, circles and listening to each other, peer circles. And I'm going to ask you, Joe, then Sue, and then I'll wrap up, I suppose, because I don't think we're coming to, it's gone very fast.
I'm very brief. So I just dedicated the next few months. I won't be going anywhere. So I'm doing online support and using Zoom to do circles and doing preparation with people and doing one-to-one. So if anyone who listens to this is struggling with a conflict in their home or relationship, then please get in touch. And I'm hoping to develop this so that I can really, I think we can create that safety on Zoom to bring people who have opposing views, but it's going to take a lot of thought about how we do it. There are people who are developing this whole area. So,
yeah. So would you mind sharing your details in the chat so people can get, if you've got a website or a social media link, so that people, if they need to, can get in touch with you? If that's it.
I'll just put my email.
That would be really useful.
And Sue, I know that the area of mental health is one you're very passionate about as well, in terms of how do we keep the balance and are there to really help and support those who are coming out suffering. Do you want to add to that?
I would add from a perspective of if you have concerns about anything to do with mental health, to do with many other things that are causing people distress or concern at the minute, from domestic abuse to other forms of behaviour that are safeguarding, not what we'd like to see in society, then look for where you can find support locally from groups, because they are out there. You can find them through your local council, county council, district councils, and local charities who will offer support or signpost you to the right people. But if you are worried or you want to talk to someone, it's really important that you take that step and just ask to speak to someone, or do some Googling and find an organisation you can drop an email to, whatever it might be. But if I look into our community, one of the biggest things I'm very keen to do and move forward with is what we can do to support people from young children up to people in the above 80s who have been isolating in their homes or in small groups in their homes, and enabling them to feel that it's okay to come out, and how safe it is to come out, and what it needs to look like for them to feel okay. And that's some of the conversations we're looking at to support within our community, working with our local charity and working with people who've been supporting with our town offer, individuals that have been alone for over 12 weeks in their home and they've been getting home deliveries. We've been looking at welfare and making sure that in a safe way, though, that support is available on a day-to-day basis for people, but also looking to see what that means going forward. So I think it's about keeping the conversation going, and if you're worried, then talk to someone, but find someone you feel safe to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Well, thank you both so much. So I know we're coming up to a few minutes before 3. Georgina, is there anything else you want to add? I've written in my details too. I'm on Facebook Live several times a week, Seed Women with Lynne Frank's group. And I'm all over the place, all over social media. I can be found everywhere. Ubiquitous is the word.
Excellent. Well, that's easy to find, isn't it? So, yeah, if you'd like to follow up the session with Lynne or with Jo or with Sue, their details are in the chat.
And can I add also, if anybody wants to start a Power of 7 group in their community, come and let me know. That'd be lovely.
Absolutely. And really, this festival is also all about making those connections and reaching out and taking action. Building communities, finding inspiration, finding unity and harmony. That is everything that we're about. So yes, please do take the opportunity to follow up. That's actually the end of Campfire Conversations for today. We will be back at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. You can find the whole programme at campfire.world, and the other stages are swinging into action about now. So Little Chill is on in a couple of hours with music until midnight, or post midnight, I should say. There's acoustic fire, there's Zen, there's lots of stuff other happening. So do go and explore and enjoy. And I will see you back here at Campfire Conversations at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Thank you guys so much for what a really inspiring, wonderful way to end a Friday, with lots of sort of deep meaningfuls and positivity, and lots of things to take away and think about. So thank you for your time. I hope you have a wonderful long solstice weekend if you're taking any time for yourselves. And thank you for a brilliant chat.
Well, thank you for facilitating. Okay, God bless.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.